Hey, Agent Inferno, it's Matt and Rebecca again for your Wisdom Wednesday deep dive, where we take a topic or some content that we had the opportunity to experience in the last several days or weeks, and then share it with you. And I am thrilled today to share with you an excerpt from one of my favorite coaches that I have the privilege of working with. His name is Jordan Freed. And if you haven't checked out Jordan Freed, he's got some programs that he puts together called My Freed Life, and you can go to myfreedlife.com and learn a little bit more about Jordan and his courses and classes and teaching. And so we had our leadership group get together a few weeks ago, and Jordan came in for about an hour and just continued to pour value into our people. And there's one section, I took like 9 pages of notes in my notebook around the conversation. And one of the sections that we'd like to share with you are an area where he got inspiration from a book called The Making of a Corporate Athlete, or The Corporate Athlete. And he had comprised concepts that he put together, and he delivered them as like the 5 F's for living a powerful life, or living a full life, or living a freed life, if you will. And so Rebecca and I wanted to kind of share with you what some of those F's are. And so the first F that he talked about is, if we think of ourselves as corporate athletes, one of the first things that we got to battle is fatigue. And this isn't just like mental fatigue, it's physical fatigue, it's energetic fatigue, it's like battling burnout. It's a never-ending thing. And so he said that as corporate athletes, we've got to treat ourselves with appropriate rest, just like the professionals out there. And so he broke it up into 3 categories that he prescribes for himself and any of the people that he coaches. And the first one that he suggested is that number one, he calls it Wellness Wednesday. He takes 1 day off a week, every week, to just completely disconnect and be present in his life. So 1 day a week, he chose Wednesday for him, and he called it his Wellness Wednesday. And he said the next level to where his life began to really change was that he created 1 3-day weekend per month. So 1 3-day weekend per month would allow him to find some time, do something really cool, maybe get out of town, do a day trip, whatever, with his family, and just have a little bit of an extended recharge moment as well. And then lastly, he said that 3 to 4 7-day vacations per year made all the difference to him, right? 3 to 4 7-day vacations made all the difference. And he says, here's the thing, you can't think about it and not do it. He said the trick with this was at the beginning of the year, grabbing the calendar, putting it out there, and then mapping out all your days off up front. And then what happens is when you map out these days up front and commit to them, you figure out your life and you build your life around those. So I loved it. My key takeaway was like, man, I would feel guilty doing 3-day weekends. And yet when I do them, I come back super powered up. Rebecca, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wrote down a couple of things around that exactly there, because you feel weird taking off. But one of the things he said whenever we have some discussion about it was, well, you're never going to have a day off if you don't have a day off. Oh, thanks for that, Jordan.
Weird.
And you're right. And you got to put it on the calendar. We all do. And another thing that he said that I thought was pretty powerful was that you have to establish the habits now of the person you want to be. And if I'm looking at myself in 6 months, in a year, in 6 years, I want to be the person that has 3-day weekends, that has 3 or 4 7-day vacations every year. And so those are the habits that I need in my life right now.
Huge. So that first one is battling fatigue to become that corporate athlete. What's the second one?
The second one is fear and anxiety. And he talked a lot about handling fear and anxiety by having a plan. And he gave us an acronym for it. He said, if we use PACE to establish plans around handling our fears and anxieties, it can make that fear way more productive. So the acronym is PACE, P-A-C-E. And he said, the first thing you want to do is have a primary plan. And in real estate, we all know what that looks like. You're going to help buyers and sellers through to the closing. You're going to build your business. You're also going to have an alternative plan. And some of the examples that he talked about through this were with COVID. So when you're coaching people and big crazy things happen in your life, like what we've experienced the last couple of years, it's not being a pessimist to have an alternative plan. So primary plan, your alternative plan. You even go so far as to have a contingency plan. What if that doesn't work out or if something else happens. And when we're people that own big businesses and when we're people that operate our lives off the people we want to be, you have to run it like a business. And that's why they call it the making of a corporate athlete. So the final point was the emergency plan. Did you have something to add to that?
Well, no, I just love the fact that he said he pulled this from the special forces. So like the Navy SEALs and the Green Berets, when they go out on a mission, they follow a pace. They've got a primary, alternative, contingency, and emergency plan. Like if everything goes wrong, how we get out of here, right? If we think about our businesses in the same way, I think that can eliminate a lot of the fear and anxiety, right?
Absolutely.
Did you want to share like the main sources of anxiety that he talked about?
You go for it, and then I've got the questions that we can run.
Got it. Yeah. So he says, fear is really a fear of the unknown or the fear of the future. And fear, when attacking fear, you got to just ask what if questions. So what if that happens? And what if that happens? What's the worst thing that can happen? Now, anxiety generally stems from three sources. And the first source, he says, is the questions that we ask ourselves is, what are you doing that you know you shouldn't be doing, right? And if we think about in our jobs, if we're really avoiding what we should be doing and we're doing something else, that can create anxiety because eventually like it's going to creep up that you're not producing the way that you should be. The second source is that what are you not doing that you know you should be doing, right? When you catch yourself in that awareness mode, is like, I really should be having those conversations, or I should be picking up the phone, or I probably should be engaging with these visitors that are coming through the open house or not. And then lastly is, what is the uncontrollable that I'm attempting to control? What are the things that we're attempting to shape, shift, or mold into our own way that are unmovable, right? And that can cause a lot of anxiety. For instance, when lockdowns happened, you can create a lot of anxiety thinking that you can control it. And yet at the end of the day, if things are like, you can't change that, right? So I really like those three.
I agree. And I think for me, the one that I always come back to is, what am I seeking to control that I can't? And it's just being a high D and a driver and somebody that likes to have a plan for everything. Knowing that I can't control it all and being okay with it is fine, because then it takes the pressure off of me. It takes the stress and the pressure, and it's going to be fine. It's all going to be okay. And I think too, guys, having somebody that you can talk to about whatever that pressure is and they can shed some light on, a coach, a mentor, a teammate, and putting into words that you're feeling stress and pressure and anxiety. Like when we're at the top of an organization or a team, sometimes it can get lonely up there. And making sure that you've got people in your life before it gets really lonely is one of the best pieces of advice that I ever had.
Yeah, this is really tactical, this spot here. So if you're ever feeling fear or anxiety in your business, we need to maybe ask yourself, what are the 4 different levels of plans that you have? And then ask yourselves the 3 questions around anxiety. What are you not doing that you should be doing? What should you be doing that you're not doing? And what are you attempting to control? And when you answer those questions, you can remove a lot of anxiety, right? You can remove a lot of anxiety. Moving on to the third F. The third F he talked about was focus, right? And top people are masters of focus, and where you put your energy will determine how you feel. One of the examples that he shared on the call was, and if you're listening, think about this as well. I'd like for you to put all of your attention to your left foot. Now, where is that left foot? Is it on the ground? Is it in a chair? Are you cross-legged? Do you have part of it sitting on a ledge underneath a desk like I do? Where do you feel the pressure from the floor? Is it in one part of your foot or all of your foot? Is it more on your heel or more on your toes? Do you have a sock on? Do you have a shoe on, right? Is your foot numb because you're sitting on it like funny? And the thing is if you sit there and think about it right now, because I asked you to think about it, are you now experiencing sensations, actual feelings in your feet that 35 seconds ago were not there? It's exactly right? Like where our attention goes is our focus is where energy shows up. And he says that what happens for most of us is we get trapped in habitual patterns and questions. And some of the most disempowering questions that we ask ourselves is like, what do I have to do today? What do I have to get done? What's on the to-do list? As opposed to thinking about things like, well, what am I ultimately grateful for? And where am I wealthy in my life that I don't even know it, right? And he says, when we speak in don't wants, like, I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be fat. All of our mind is only focusing on what we say we don't want. Broke, fat. And until we can flip those don't wants into something positive, into positive specifics, we can't change our focus until then, right?
Yep,
Other
absolutely.
thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts around it is I tend to be okay talking to myself and don't once. And what really resonated with me is whenever he started talking about how are you talking to the people in your life? So one of the best examples that I thought of is how I asked my husband to talk to me. I don't want you to be on your phone when we're at dinner. And what's the difference of that relationship look like if I say, I want your attention and I want to connect with you? Those are two very different conversations. And so,
Right.
yeah, that was a big takeaway for me on that one.
Awesome.
So the fourth F.
This fourth F, this is kind of up your alley.
It is. How's this always happen? It's like whatever you put out in the world comes back to you. I don't know. Weird rule like that. So the fourth F is around finances. And he talked about there being 3 different phases to financial wealth building. And the first was survival. And that's how much income do I need to just cover my basic expenses? And here in the Midwest and some of the people that he coached, he found an average is between $7,000 and $8,000 a month gets you in survival mode. So if you were to build up enough passive income to take care of that, we can all agree that that's a number that most people could just live off of. The second phase is a lifestyle phase. So how much do I need to live the lifestyle that I want? And what he found in that phase is that was somewhere between $1,500 and $25,000 a month that you could live a different lifestyle. You could eat where you wanted to eat. You could go on the vacations that you wanted to go on, and live a different lifestyle than just that basic survival mode. And then the third phase of wealth building is legacy. And the question that you're asking yourself in that phase is, what do I want to leave behind? Whose lives do I want to affect from the legacy that I'm leaving? And I know for some of us, especially what I feel like is people in my generation, we're almost embarrassed about putting out into the world how much money you want to make or what you think your talent and skill set is worth to other people. But whenever you think about it from a frame of mind of who am I going to affect, whose lives get better because I'm fulfilling my passion and my mission, it's a different conversation. That's a different ballgame.
Yeah. What really inspired me about this conversation is that it wasn't about sacrifice and just rice and beans until you retire, right? Like there's a lot of financial advice out there, and a lot of it's valid and it works for different people in different ways. And yet, what I really liked about this is that the very next level after survival is lifestyle. I think, having an abundant mindset and looking to create a life worth living for me isn't about only making coffee at home and eating rice, right? Like that's not a life worth living for me. And for some people that's cool. Like minimize your expenses to the bare minimum and then you're financially free at $3,000 a month. I don't want to live that life. And so I'm looking for opportunities and ways to hit those next levels, lifestyle, then legacy. And that's, I think one of my most favorite ones is you create survival, you nail down the survival, you build the lifestyle you want, and then now you can just begin blessing others. And it just, I love it. He said, who do you want to help when you're gone? And have it be set up that it continues to roll. That was really powerful for me. So I was really grateful for that.
Super powerful. Well, and I want to share a story. I don't know that we've shared this yet with our Agent Inferno listeners here, but there's a guy in our office that I think does an amazing job living this out. And recently over Christmas, he found out that there was someone in our world here at the Keller Williams office who didn't have a car, didn't have a way to get anywhere. And he pulled together resources to just do something incredible. And he got together all the agents in the office and said, look, if we all chip in just a little bit, I think for Christmas, we can buy this family a car. And she's a mom and works really hard here for us. And her husband works hard, but things just hadn't worked out for them to be able to have vehicles to get places. So like her mom would come get her and take her on to lunch break. And there were just some things that like he saw that and he picked up on. And I think it's really interesting to note that whenever you're being responsible with your finances and you've taken care of your own survival and you're building a lifestyle, that not only can you leave a legacy, but you can do things that help other people build a legacy right now. And that's the way to live a life by design. And so we bought
that was one of the highlights of my year for sure, whenever we were able to deliver that car and see the look on her face. Anyway, that was super cool. Last F, number 5, is we got to become masters of failure. And dealing with failure is something in the corporate athlete that you're going to have to deal with if you want to be super successful, you're going to be dealing with failure all the time. However, you can't actually fail until you make a conscious decision to quit what you're doing. If you keep going, what you experience was simply a lesson, right? And it's just simply how we have to frame our relationship with failure. And it's when top performers get results without drama. When we get to that, results without drama, it makes us free. Now, I didn't say positive results are what you expected. When you put something out there, something happens, you get a result. How we see it is the story we put around it. And so if we put something out there, we either got what we expected, we got more than we expected, or it didn't turn out as we expected. It wasn't failure, it was a result. And then when we can have that result without drama, you become free. And so the biggest thing, and probably one of the challenges that you're going to face throughout your entire corporate career, is how do you change the relationship you have with failure? And one of the books that we talked about on a previous Wisdom Wednesday is a small little book called The Gap in the Gain. And in there, Jordan shares, this is what it reminded me, he says, rituals of review can create results. So having a habit of taking a look back and categorizing your wins, categorizing the things that you learned or that you did well that day or even in past days can change your energy around the results that you're getting and allow you to become free from the story of the results that you received if they weren't what you expected. So definitely want to dive back into that book, The Gap in the Gain, again, as another tool to help you reframe failure and how you see failure.
So I had a really interesting conversation this week around failure. I taught a class on listings at one of the offices and like what to do with listings. And so one of the questions that somebody asked me was, how many listings have you lost? How many times did I walk in the door and they didn't choose me? And I thought about it for a minute. And I bet, Matt, that while I was learning and even through my career, that I probably lost over 50 listings. 50 times I failed. And I mean, as I was thinking about it and I was running the numbers, I'm like, gosh, that's kind of nasty. And guess how much I learned from that? And I hope that there are times in my life right now that I'm failing and I have such clarity around what it feels like to win that I can really soak in the failures. Because I learned so much, but it's hard to fail at the time. Those 50 didn't feel good.
Right.
But how much did I learn? And I think it was really kind of funny for the person that asked the question. She's like, well, you failed more times than I've even tried. And it was like, there you go.
And there's another really good quote, right? The people that are out there that are ahead of you, they're not better than you. They've just failed more times than you've attempted. There's a lesson and there's a takeaway. So again, just a real quick recap, the 5 F's of a freed life and the making of a corporate athlete is getting in control of fatigue, right? Creating an energy plan, creating a schedule around that. Secondly, really understanding the difference between fear and anxiety and then how to attack both with a plan. You're going to pace yourself through it and ask yourself those 3 powerful questions around anxiety. Focus equals feeling, and our focus is about great questions and the questions that we ask ourselves and where we put our energy. It's going to affect our feeling. And then getting control of our finances creates a level of freedom and lifestyle that we've never experienced before. And we get to create a legacy for those around us. And lastly, our control of the way that we interpret failure is going to be the determining factor of success or not, because you can't fail unless you quit. So if you're tired of starting over, stop quitting. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us. And we'd love to hear what your takeaways were from this conversation around the 5 F's. So which one was your favorite? Which one stood out to you? And what were your takeaways?